Welcome to World Revolution Channel. Today we present the book The Factors of Luck, a scientific study of the mind that brings luck by Richard Wiseman. This book chronicles 8 years of scientific research by Wiseman to unravel the secrets behind why some people live fortunate lives while others repeatedly experience misfortune. The author points out that luck is not a matter of fate or uncontrollable chance, but rather the result of individual psychological attitudes and behavioral patterns. The book identifies 4 key principles that lucky people often use unconsciously: building extensive social networks, listening to one's intuition, and turning crises into opportunities through optimism. Furthermore, the author establishes a luck school to demonstrate how ordinary individuals can learn and practice these strategies to create tangible and lasting positive changes in their lives, career, finances, and relationships. Want to create your own luck? Listen. In that opening, it sets an incredible mission for this deep dive. It really does. We are shifting the entire concept of luck, this seemingly random, mystical force that dictates winners and losers, and we're putting it firmly in the realm of psychology, measurable, actionable psychology. That's the whole game changer here. We're diving deep into Professor Richard Wiseman's landmark 8-year research, studying over 1,000 people, and his stunning conclusion: being lucky isn't something you're born with, it's a skill set you can learn. Yeah, that's the core thesis, and it completely reframes how you think about success and failure, doesn't it? Completely. Wiseman's work moves the dial from, blaming fate to recognizing your own role in creating opportunities. So our mission today is to really unpack the first 2 of his 4 big principles. These are the behavioral techniques that have been scientifically proven, right? And these principles explain that persistent, almost uncanny consistency, why some people always seem to be in the right place in the right time, while others, they're just magnets for ill fortune, magnets even when they're facing the exact same situation. Okay, so let's unpack this. We have to start with the sheer bromantic power of chance. The stakes involved. Before we can even accept that luck is a skill, we have to acknowledge that in real life, a single moment can be the difference between life and death, between reward and total ruin. It shapes everything. Absolutely. The examples that Wiseman collected, some of them they're almost too cinematic to be real. Take the case of John Woods, a senior partner in a New York law firm. His story, his sequence of escapes, it seems cosmically impossible. It really does. So he was on the 39th floor of the World Trade Center during the 1993 bombing, and he narrowly escaped. But the sequence just keeps going. It doesn't stop there. He had a ticket booked for the Pan Am flight that exploded over Lockerbie, Scotland in 1988. Wow. But at the very last minute, he decided to cancel it. Why? To go to a mandatory office party. An office party saved his life. That's unbelievable. And then, the most astonishing part, September 11th, 2001, he left his office in the Twin Towers literally seconds before the plane hit his building. I just can't imagine the psychological impact of that. Yeah, to repeatedly cheat death just because of timing, it would change how you see the world. Oh, fundamentally. For him, it created this profound feeling that he was under some kind of special protection. And that's the life or death extreme. Yeah, but luck also plays out in these huge financial swings, where it feels like fate is actively plotting for or against you. Exactly. The source material gives us just crushing contrast with lottery outcomes. On the unlucky side, you have Maureen Wilcox. This story is just brutal. I can barely think about it. It's heartbreaking. So she buys tickets for 2 separate state lotteries, Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Okay, she picked the winning numbers for both of them. For both! That's incredible. But she mixed them up. The Massachusetts numbers won the Rhode Island lottery, and the Rhode Island numbers won the Massachusetts lottery. So, because they were for the wrong state, she won absolutely nothing. 0. The despair of that, knowing you had it twice, and it just slipped through your fingers because of a tiny error, that would paralyze you. And then you contrast her with the winners, the people who get these incredible runs of good fortune, right? Like Evelyn Marie Adams. She won the New Jersey lottery twice in 4 months, which is already highly improbable. But then you have Donald Smith, who won the Wisconsin state lottery 3 times in 3 consecutive years. Get out. The odds of that are what, over 1,000,000 to 1 just to win once?
They're astronomical. It just defies any kind of statistical expectation. So these examples, as they really establish the role of chance, but they also show how luck is woven into our everyday lives. It's not just about surviving disasters. No, it's about meeting the right person at the right time, which brings us to the Stanford psychologist Alfred Bandura, right? He observed that, and I'm quoting here, the most important determinants of life paths often arise through the most trivial of circumstances, the most trivial things. So the big milestones in our lives are often kicked off by the smallest choices, walking down one street instead of another, or in Bandura's case, skipping a boring academic assignment which led him to a golf course where he met two women, one of whom became his wife. A decision to just ditch a reading assignment completely rerouted his personal future. It's a perfect example of the seemingly insignificant leading to the life-defining. And the professional world is exactly the same. It is. One prominent career counselor said, serendipity is not serendipitous. Serendipity is ubiquitous. It's everywhere, all the time. The real key is being in a position to see it and act on it. And we see this play out in history with celebrities. Take Joseph Pulitzer. He's going to become this media titan, but he arrives in America as a penniless immigrant. His prospects were basically zero. So what does he do? He spends his time playing chess in a local library. Seems unproductive, right? But it's there in that quiet room that he just happens to meet a local newspaper editor, and that one chance conversation lands him his first job as a reporter. It was the launch pad for his entire empire. And you see the same pattern in Hollywood. Mel Gibson auditions for Mad Max in 1979. He's a complete unknown. The night before the audition, he gets into a street fight, so he shows up looking battered, bruised, completely exhausted, which you'd think would be a disaster. You would. But the producer, George Miller, took one look at him and instantly offered him the lead role. He said Gibson looked exactly like the tough, scared protagonist they needed, so his bad luck was perfectly timed to become career-defining good luck. And then there's Kate Moss, just a teenager, standing in a check-in line at JFK Airport, coming home from vacation. A talent scout spots her. She wasn't looking for an opportunity, she was just there, present in a place with a lot of people. These anecdotes all point to the same thing. The outcome of luck can be huge, but the input, that little chance encounter, is incredibly common. So the real question isn't whether these moments exist, but why some people seem to constantly be available for them. And that's where Wiseman's scientific lens comes in. So how do you even start? How do you take something as, fuzzy as luck and turn it into science? He started by going straight to the source. He just conducted a really basic survey with shoppers in London, just asking them on the street. Yep, he asked them a simple question. Do you consider yourself consistently lucky or consistently unlucky? The data was fascinating. What did he find? 50% said they were consistently lucky, 14% said they were consistently unlucky. So that's 64, nearly 2/3 of people who feel that their luck is a consistent pattern, a consistent ongoing pattern. And it didn't stop there. The consistency ran across their whole lives, meaning if they were lucky in their career, they were also overwhelmingly likely to say they were lucky in their relationships, their health, their finances. It was a holistic thing. Okay? That point about consistency is, I think, the most important finding from the early research. It's crucial because if luck were just random, a roll of the dice, you'd expect it to be all over the place. Good luck here, bad luck there, right? A great job, but terrible love life. Exactly. But the fact that it correlated across all these major life domains that strongly suggested the cause wasn't some external fate. It was something inside the person, something you could measure. And yet the participants themselves, especially the lucky ones, they just said it was pure chance. They did. So Wiseman had to rule out the obvious explanations, the first, most logical one being intelligence. Maybe lucky people are just smarter. They make better choices. It makes sense. So they ran the tests. They give everyone standardized psychological tests for nonverbal and verbal reasoning, the core measures of intelligence. And the verdict? Definitive. Lucky and unlucky people got roughly the same scores on both tests. So luck has nothing to do with being smarter. Nothing at all. So if it's not intelligence and it's not random fate, it has to be something else. It has to be. And the thoughts, the feelings, the actions, the behavioral patterns, which means we need to look at the lived experiences of these two groups. And Wiseman did that through in-depth interviews. The contrast is stark. Let's start with some unlucky Jody, a 36-year-old poet from Texas. Jody's life just seemed to work. When she wanted to get a teaching gig at a big writers' conference, she didn't send out 50 resumes. A few days later, she just happened to bump into the founder of the organization. She started a conversation and walked away with a workshop offer on the spot. Effortless. She described her life as having exceptional good luck and feeling totally in control. Okay, so hold that feeling of control, and now let's compare it to unlucky Susan, who was 34. Her life was, well, a catalog of misfortune, a tragic comic catalog. I mean, her bad luck started in childhood. Repeated accidents, splitting her head open, trapping her foot in a grid, getting hit by a falling board, and it just got worse. As an adult, her dating life was a catastrophe. One blind date broke both his legs in a motorcycle crash on the way to meet her. Oh no. The next one walked straight into a glass door and broke his nose. It's almost comical if it weren't so awful. The relentlessness of it is terrifying. And it wasn't just small things. Her wedding was canceled 2 days before the ceremony because the church burned down. Awesome. Of course, she broke her arm, then her legs soon after. The most extreme story she told was having 8 separate car accidents on a single 50-mile trip. 8 accidents. It's not even statistically possible, she said. The persistent bad luck meant people were afraid to be around her. They tell her just sit there and don't move. The psychological weight of that must be immense. You'd feel completely helpless, and it's hard not to feel like she's cursed by some outside force. But then you look at another supremely lucky person, Lee, a 42-year-old marketing manager. His life is defined by improbable escapes. The tractor story. At 16, he's standing on a stationary tractor connected to a massive automated plow. A friend moves the tractor. He starts to fall right toward the spikes. In that exact instant, the stainless steel link connecting the tractor and the plow just shears. It breaks. It saves his life by throwing him backwards. Another life-saving moment defined entirely by chance. And that luck just continued. Absolutely. He reluctantly helps his father with a garden job one day, and boom, he instantly meets the woman who becomes his life. They've been happily married for over 25 years. And career-wise, always in the right place at the right time. Exactly. Winning awards, getting promotions. For Lee, luck is a tangible, reliable force in his life. Then we swing back to the unlucky, like Stephen, a 54-year-old publisher. His life was a series of financial disasters, a roller coaster that only went down. He won on a scratch card with a massive prize, only to find out a printer's error meant the prize was shared with 30,000 other people. His payout was almost nothing. And then the stock market crash. He won a big block of stocks in a competition, and then one of the worst crashes in history happens and wipes out their value. That financial pressure, it led to the ultimate disaster. Yeah, a solicitor who was renting space in his office stole company funds. It led to his bankruptcy, unemployment, and then a serious stress-induced heart attack. And what did he say about it all? He summed up his entire mindset. He said, I guess that's the way the cards have been dealt. Fatalism. Yeah, that's the key. That resignation, that sense that the world is controlling you. It connects right back to that lottery experiment you mentioned. It does. When Wiseman asked the groups about their expectations of winning the lottery that week, the difference was profound. What was it? The lucky people's expectation of winning was more than twice that of the unlucky people. And that wasn't based on any evidence. It was just belief, pure expectation. And that expectation shapes your behavior. If you expect good things, you act differently. You notice things. You take risks that people with low expectations just filter out, which leads us directly to the 4 actionable principles of luck, right? So the first core principle is the foundation. Everything else. Lucky people create, notice, and act upon the chance opportunities in their life.
This is where luck stops being chance and starts being a skill. Exactly. The lucky people we've talked about, Jody, Lee, they aren't just waiting for good things to happen. Their personalities, their traits make them generate a high volume of potential opportunities. So at its core, luck is a numbers game.
You have to be in it to win it. Yeah, like the competition winners, Risley. When you interview winners like Wendy and Joe, they say it's luck, but the reality is their behavior. Wendy was entering around 60 postal and 70 internet competition every single week. Joe and Len were entering about 50 a week. They weren't magically lucky, they were maximizing their odds through sheer methodical effort. And Joe's quote just says it all. I think you make your own luck. You've got to be in to win. That's the whole principle right there.
And this idea is backed by Wiseman's findings on 3 critical personality traits: extroversion, neuroticism, and openness. Let's break those down first. This idea of building a network of luck. Extroversion. Lucky people score significantly higher on extroversion. They're naturally sociable, they thrive on interaction, and they deliberately pick jobs and hobbies that put them in contact with tons of people. And that constant social contact, it's the engine for chance encounters. It is. Think about Robert, the safety officer who got stranded by snow in France. Right, he just started chatting with a couple in the ferry waiting room and discovered they lived near him in England. A casual chat solved a massive logistical problem. Sometimes it's more than just a problem. It can pivot your entire life. Like Joseph, former inmate, an incredible story. He's on a delayed train, he's bored, he strikes up a conversation with the woman next to him. She happens to be a psychologist just by chance, and she's so impressed with him that she suggests he should pursue a career in psychology, which he did successfully. He wasn't looking for a career change, he was just being sociable. The power of the casual interaction, the weak tie. Samantha, the secretary who wanted to work in film, she shares a cab in New York, starts talking to the older man next to her, finds out he's a film executive, and he gets her a meeting. It launches her career. So lucky people have this kind of social magnetism. That's a great way to put it. And it's physical. The observation showed. They smiled twice as much. They hold more eye contact. And they use 3 times as much open body language, uncrossed arms and legs. So they're physically signaling, approach me. Exactly, which means they initiate more conversations and more people approach them. It's a constant influx of new contacts and new opportunities. And it's not just about meeting people, it's about maintaining those networks. Crucially, lucky people like Kathy, who called herself a collector of people, they really invest in keeping those connections alive. They stay in touch with hundreds of people, and that's where the math gets really interesting. The simple math of connections. Yes, so you know roughly 300 people on a first-name basis. If you meet one new person, Sue, you're 1 handshake away from her 300 contacts. Okay, that makes sense, but the second handshake is where the exponential power kicks in. It's 300 times 300. You are suddenly 2 handshakes away from 90,000 new possibilities for chance opportunity into one new person. And if Kathy, the people collector, has 50 friends over for dinner, she's suddenly 2 degrees of separation from 4.5 million people. That's mind-boggling. The wide active network isn't just for emotional support, it is an exponential engine for serendipity. So they're maximizing the volume of good things that can happen, which brings us to the second part, noticing them. This is about neuroticism. Lucky people score much lower here. They're calm, relaxed, less anxious, while the unlucky group tends to be tense and anxious. And anxiety, it acts like a filter, a cognitive filter. When you're stressed or laser focused on one thing, like avoiding failure, your brain creates tunnel vision. You literally miss information that's outside that narrow band. And this was proven perfectly by the newspaper experiment. It was a beautiful experiment. Participants were told to do a simple but focused task. Count the number of photographs in a newspaper. Halfway through the paper, Wiseman printed a message in giant, bold, 1.5-inch high type. It said, "Stop counting. Tell the experimenter you have seen this and win 100 pounds.
Wait, so there's a giant sign offering 100 pounds and people miss it? How is that possible?
Selective attention. They were so focused on the task, so afraid of missing a photograph, that their brain filtered out the unexpected opportunity that was literally staring them in the face. That is profound. It means the anxiety and the intense effort of the unlucky person trying too hard is the very thing that makes them blind to the opportunity. That's precisely it. The relaxed approach gives you a broader, more receptive focus. Remember Richard, the guy who found money?
Yeah, he realized he only found it when he was happy and relaxed. He said his senses were more acute when he wasn't looking for anything in particular. It's the paradox of searching. The harder you look for one specific thing, the less likely you are to find something else that might be even more valuable. And that's why lucky people stumble across opportunities in random places, like the radio or an article they weren't looking for. Like Lynn, who saw an article about a competition winner and it sparked her entire writing career. Or Diana, the professor, who randomly heard a radio report about preschool education, which led her to run a major government program. And then there was Elizabeth and her magic radio. Her magic. She swore it always delivered exactly the information she needed right when she needed it, like hearing the head of a private detective association being interviewed just when she needed one. Her relaxed, open mental state allowed that critical, unexpected information to break through the noise, while the unlucky person's anxiety-driven tunnel vision just filters it out. It's a self-perpetuating cycle, which leads to the third piece of the puzzle. Openness, right. Lucky people score extremely high on openness. They love variety, novelty, unpredictability. Unlucky people, on the other hand, prefer routine and the conventional. And routine is the enemy of chance. If you always go to the same places, you only meet the same people. Exactly. This openness naturally drives lucky people into new environments. Robert takes spur-of-the-moment holidays. Eugenie deliberately switches grocery stores and tries every local craft she can find just for the novelty. Some of them even made it a formal system, like the person who rolled the dice to decide between options, or the guy who forces himself to only talk to people wearing a specific color at a party. It's a deliberate disruption of his own social habits. That's like an apple orchard. If you keep going back to the same few trees, the apples run out. You have to explore the parts of the orchard you've never been to. And these three traits, extroversion, low neuroticism, and high openness, they all work together. Wiseman's coffee shop experiment is the perfect synthesis of all of it. Okay, let's walk through that again, but through the lens of these traits. So the setup is simple. A crisp 5-pound note on the pavement outside a coffee shop and a successful businessman sitting inside. First up is Lucky. Martin is low on neuroticism, so he's relaxed. His attention isn't narrowly focused on his phone or the task of buying coffee. That broad focus lets him see the unexpected thing, the money. And his high openness means he acts on it. He picks it up. Then he goes inside. His high extroversion makes him gravitate toward people. He sits next to the businessman, offers to buy him a coffee, and starts a conversation that could go anywhere. Now, unlucky Brenda. Brenda is high on neuroticism, so she's anxious, focused. She walks right over the 5-pound note without seeing it. Tunnel vision. Her conventionality, her low openness means she just orders her coffee, sits down quietly next to the exact same businessman, and never says a word. So the environment was identical. It offered the same two opportunities, but their psychological makeup determined whether they could see and act on them. Martin created his luck. Brenda filtered hers out of existence. That's the powerful conclusion of Principle 1. Which brings us to Principle 2. Listen to your lucky hunches. Right. If luck is about consistently making the right choices, the right partner, or the right job, how do lucky people do it without always having logical proof? The answer is intuition. The survey numbers were striking.
Almost 90% of lucky people said they trusted their intuition in relationships. 80% used it for their career. That is a massive reliance on that inner voice, far higher than the unlucky group. So scientifically, what is intuition? It's not magic, no. It's rapid, unconscious pattern recognition. Your brain is constantly gathering subtle information, micro-expressions, tiny shifts in tone, data inconsistencies that you can't consciously process. So that gut feeling is really your brain's nonverbal summary report. Exactly. It's saying, warning, this feels like that other time things went wrong, or go, this matches 1,000 successful patterns I've seen before. And researchers have demonstrated this even with artificial patterns, like long faces being linked to successful analysts. Right. The unconscious mind learns the pattern quickly and generates a reliable hunch before the conscious mind can even explain why. Lucky people just have a higher level of trust in that system, and this trust leads to amazing outcomes. Lee, the marketing manager, he had an instantaneous gut feeling the moment he met his future wife. He just knew. In business, same thing. He had a strong hunch about a client with a small order.
His colleagues said to ignore it. He trusted his gut, worked all night, and that client ended up giving him £140,000 in business. His gut feeling was financially precise. But the flip side is the tragedy of the unlucky who consistently ignore those inner warnings. Unlucky Nancy, who stayed in an unhappy marriage for 37 years, admitted she ignored her inner voice on her wedding day. And unlucky Marilyn, who kept going back to a controlling man, even though her inner voices were screaming at her to leave. They felt the signal, but they didn't trust it or obey it. And again, the stakes can be life or death. The dancer Eleanor, who was approached by that strange motorcyclist, a powerful, cold, intuitive feeling that he had a gun and was going to kill her. She just slowly started her car and drove away based on nothing but that feeling. And the feeling was right. He was later revealed to be a gang member who killed a police officer just 2 days later. It's incredible. In the professional world, Robert, the aircraft safety officer, he trusted his intuition to diagnose complex system faults, often going against his colleagues' technical analysis. His intuition was faster and more accurate. So it seems like it's not that lucky people have intuition and unlucky people don't. It's that lucky people have learned to trust it. That's the critical difference. And it leads to the second part of this principle. Lucky people take steps to boost their intuition. It's not passive. It's a skill you cultivate. How do they do that? What techniques did they use? It all centered on reducing mental noise. They used meditation. They'd clear their minds, go to a quiet place, or just step away from a problem. The goal is to quiet the conscious mind so the non-conscious signal can get through. Exactly. They're literally engineering the mental state required for intuition to speak. The unlucky person, who is often stressed and anxious, never gets that quiet. The anxiety just drowns out the subtle cues, and this creates a virtuous cycle. The more you listen to your hunches and they work out, the more you trust them, which makes you even more receptive in the future. It's a consistent pattern of successful intuitive decision-making. You can consciously move yourself from the unlucky group to the lucky one just by investing in that mental quietude. So, to summarize the first two principles, lucky people maximize opportunities by being sociable, calm, and open to new things, and they make consistently good choices by trusting and cultivating their intuition. And those first two principles already explain so much about why people like Jody or Lee just seem to have life work out. The other two principles, expecting good fortune and turning bad luck into good, they just reinforce this cycle. Full shift in perspective from fate to a psychological mechanism. That's the real deep dive here. What does this all mean for you, the listener? For example, does this explain something as elusive as being lucky in love?
Oh, it absolutely does. And the research gives a fascinating, almost mechanical explanation for it. Also, the study found one reason lucky people are lucky in love is that they instinctively choose partners who are psychologically similar to them. So they pair up with other extroverted, relaxed, intuitive, optimistic people. That's it. They're not falling for the opposites attract cliché. They're drawn to psychological symmetry. People whose basic wiring supports the kind of positive, open life they already lead. While unlucky people showed no such pattern, they chose partners randomly, often leading to conflict because their underlying operating systems were just different. Precisely. That raises a really profound question for you to think about. If we stop focusing on the usual external compatibility things and instead focused on aligning our core psychological systems, our expectations, our intuition, our social openness with a partner, could we actually engineer long-term compatibility? If luck is compatibility with yourself, then maybe luck in love is just finding compatibility with another lucky person. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, follow up the next topic.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are thrilled to come back to continue the factors of luck, diving deep into the groundbreaking research of Professor Richard Wiseman. That's right, last time we sort of laid the groundwork, didn't we? We did. We established that luck isn't some mystical force, exactly. It's not magic. It's a predictable, measurable, and honestly, a controllable psychological state. We covered the first two big principles, maximizing chance opportunities and listening to your intuition, right? And today, we're finishing that scientific profile. We're looking at the final two pillars of, you could say, manufactured good fortune, the immense power of expectation and the psychological skill needed to transform adversity.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're moving straight into Principle 3, which is all about expecting good fortune. Now, this concept, it sounds deceptively simple. You know, lucky people expect good things to happen, but the research suggests it's a much more powerful, almost self-programming mechanism than just standard optimism. It absolutely is. The core idea here is that lucky people's strong positive expectations about the future, they act as these powerful self-fulfilling prophecies, so they help them actually fulfill their ambitions. That's it. Their optimism isn't just a passive hope, it's a real mechanism for proactive behavior. And you can see this so clearly when we compare the lives of people who've embraced this versus those who, well, haven't. The contrast is it's stark when you look at the case files. Let's take Claire, who is classified as consistently unlucky, right? Her story is this repeating cycle of failure. She had an abusive first marriage, then an unemployed second partner who left her financially dependent, just a string of really difficult relationships. And her conclusion wasn't that she needed to change something, it was that life itself is just inherently unfair. And that's the negative feedback loop right there. Because she expected things to fail, she likely adopted these defensive, closed-off behaviors which would push away the very people or opportunities they needed. Exactly. Her expectation was reinforcing her unlucky status over and over again. Okay, now let's contrast that with Eric. Eric, yeah, he's a 51-year-old man who's had this huge range of jobs. Office boy, coal miner, taxi driver, croupier. He loved every single one, everyone. He has a stable, happy family life, married for 40 years, kids, grandkids, and he says without any hesitation that he is the luckiest man you will ever meet. And his whole attitude just perfectly encapsulates this principle. I think the source material quotes him saying something like, when he sees it raining, he thinks, great, my flowers will be out tomorrow, right? It's not just putting a positive spin on it. No, it's an automatic, unconscious reframing. He's immediately looking for the benefit in something that's, neutral or even a little bit negative. It sets him up for a successful day no matter what's happening outside.
So let's dig into the data that actually backs this up. The first sub-principle is this idea of expectation of continued fortune. How did Wiseman even quantify something as fuzzy as expectation? Well, we quantified it by asking the people in the study to rate the chances of different life events happening to them, both positive and negative, on a scale of likelihood. Exactly, and the results were just astounding. The lucky people had incredibly high expectations for positive things. We're talking near certainty, like an 80 or 90% likelihood of achieving their lifetime ambitions or having a great holiday. To be 85% certain you're going to achieve your life's ambition, that's a huge amount of self-belief. It's an incredibly high baseline, and of course the unlucky group gave us that critical contrast. What did they expect? They reported significantly higher expectations for negative events. They were more likely to predict they'd suffer severe depression, or choose the wrong career, or become overweight. So if you believe bad things are that likely to happen, in your brain's attentional system, it starts to filter reality to prove you right. That's it exactly. Your brain starts to collectively notice all the failures, confirming the reality you are already anticipating. It's the self-fulfilling prophecy mechanism in action.
You mentioned an analogy in the sources, the one about the fortune teller. It's a perfect way to think about it. Yeah, if a fortune teller tells you your future is bright and you really believe them, you don't just sit back and wait. No, you'd start acting on it. Reject happier, more open, more sociable. And that change in your behavior, smiling more, starting conversations, it creates the friendly, receptive environment you were told to expect. The prophecy comes true because you are motivated to act on the belief, which flows perfectly into the second sub-principle here, the motivation to act and persevere. If your internal belief is, say, 80% certainty of success, you're naturally going to be motivated to take that first step. But if it's 80% certainty of failure, inertia wins every time. And we see this so beautifully demonstrated with the competition winners in the study. People like Lynn, Joe, and Wendy, right? These people weren't just winning by fate. They were winning a huge volume of prizes, cars, holidays, cash, because they consistently and tirelessly entered a massive number of competitions. This wasn't just a casual hobby. Wendy, for instance, enters something like 60 postal and 70 internet competitions every week. It's basically a part-time job. But Joe, he summed up the philosophy perfectly. He said, "You gotta be in to win." Simple as that. For them, the tiny chance of winning is completely outweighed by their huge expectation that eventually their name is going to be the one that's pulled out. The unlucky people, they didn't even bother entering. Their low expectation just prevented the opportunity from ever even happening. They guaranteed they wouldn't win by just staying on the sidelines. Exactly. And that active persistence is so critical, even when a task feels impossible. Which brings us to the impossible puzzle experiment. This was such an elegant piece of behavioral science. So participants were given a puzzle that was actually designed to be almost unsolvable. That's right, it involved a really complex spatial and manipulative task. It was designed to be incredibly frustrating. We had our unlucky participants, Craig, Sam, and Brenda, and our lucky ones, Bernard and Peter. And what did the unlucky participants do when faced with this? They gave up, and quickly too, often in under 20 minutes. They just confirmed their own belief that the task was impossible. And they rationalized their failure. It was the puzzle's fault, not their approach. Their low expectation was confirmed, so they had an excuse to quit. But Bernard and Peter, the lucky participants, they didn't just spend more time on it, did they? They approached it differently. Totally differently. They showed this immense behavioral flexibility. They were determined to keep going until it was done, no matter how long it took. But more importantly, when one strategy didn't work, they just pivoted to a different one immediately. They saw failure not as this final confirmation of the impossibility, as data. It was just a sign that this specific approach didn't work, so they had to try another one. That persistence is a direct result of their optimism. They truly believed the solution had to exist somewhere.
So the key difference isn't the difficulty of the puzzle, but the internal story they tell themselves about their ability to solve it. Exactly. Failure is a stop sign, the unlucky, but as a detour sign for the lucky. I like that. And this principle of expectation, it goes beyond puzzles and into their social lives, which is so critical. Principle 3, expect successful interactions. Yes, now this could sound like just, having good interpersonal skills. How do we know lucky people aren't just selectively remembering the good interactions instead of actively creating them? That's a fair question. It's what psychologists call the fundamental attribution error. Yeah, but the data really points to active creation because the lucky person's expectation actually changes the behavior of other people. Lucky people consistently expect others to be pleasant, friendly, and helpful, so that expectation shifts their own approach. They're more relaxed, more open, more inviting, which in turn causes other people to react more positively toward them. So it's a feedback loop of positive affirmation, like the Pygmalion effect. Precisely. You expect high performance, you often get high performance. You expect kindness, you often receive kindness. And we see this so clearly with Andrea, the 25-year-old administrator. Her life just seemed charmed. She found jobs right away, dated, as the study says, the cream of the crop, and the origin of her expectation was fascinating, if a little tragic. Her mother died when she was just 7, right? And that's the trauma that could easily create a very pessimistic outlook on life. But instead, all the adults around her, teachers, family, friends, they treated her with, quote, utmost kindness and respect out of sympathy. So that intense, early positive reinforcement became her foundational belief. She just expected adults in general to be pleasant and trustworthy. So when she walks into a job interview or on a date, he projects this confidence and openness, which makes her instantly more approachable, more attractive. Her expectation became her reality. It's just incredible how that works. A manager with high expectations gets better performance out of their team. A manager with low expectations and despondency, we see it all the time. Lucky people just anticipated good performance. The universe and that anticipation helps mold the interaction to deliver it. Okay, that's a really comprehensive look at how anticipation fuels action. But now we have to get to principle 4, which is maybe the most crucial of all because it deals with the one thing nobody can control: bad things happening. It's about how the lucky mind processes inevitable adversity, right? And this principle really captures the incredible resilience of lucky people. The core idea is that they use these specific psychological techniques to cope with and often even thrive on ill fortune. A lucky person is just as likely to break their leg as an unlucky one. The difference is in the recovery. Okay, let's start with sub-principle 1, seeing the positive side. You define this as downward counterfactual thinking. Can you break that term down for us? Of course. So counterfactual thinking is just when we imagine alternatives to past events. We create a different reality in our heads. Okay, now most people, when something bad happens, they engage in upward counterfactual thinking. If only I had left 10 minutes earlier, I wouldn't have been in that accident, right? Focusing on the better outcome you missed, which just breeds regret. Exactly. But downward counterfactual thinking is the lucky person's superpower. They spontaneously and often unconsciously imagine how the negative event could have been so much worse. It's awful, I was in an accident, but at least I didn't break my neck. That's it. Precisely by focusing on the imagined worse outcome that they narrowly avoided, they immediately soften the emotional blow of what actually happened. It's like psychological first aid. And this scenario you used to test this was so powerful, being shot in the arm during a bank robbery. We asked them to rate how lucky that event was, and the reactions were just completely polarized. What did the unlucky people say? People like Stephen, they rated it very negatively, like a -2 or a -3. They saw it as just more proof the world was against them. Stephen even asked, how can this be considered lucky unless you enjoy getting shot? He only saw the pain. To the key people, they instantly went to that downward counterfactual place. Instantly. Lee, a lucky sales manager, rated it a +3, a highly positive event. He immediately focused on the fact that the bullet only hit his arm, saying it could have killed you outright. And Marvin, the private detective, was even more constructive, also rating it to +3, but he added that he could sell your story to the newspapers and make some money. They didn't deny the bad luck, but they framed it as a lucky escape or even an opportunity. And this isn't just a hypothetical thing. It works even after genuine, severe hardship. The case of Agnes, the artist from Scotland, really demonstrates that. Agnes's life was just filled with these near-fatal accidents. She fell into a fire as a child, she inhaled gas fumes, almost drowned, got hit by a car. Any one of those things could traumatize a person for life. You'd think so, but she defined every single one of them as a lucky escape. She always focused on the narrow escape mechanism. When she fell in the fire, she noted it had just been put out, so it wasn't as bad as it could have been. When the car hit her, she focused on the fact the driver was slowing down for a turn. She actively searches for that silver lining. And they also use social comparison to soften bad luck, don't they? They do. It's another form of downward comparison, but external. They compare their own misfortune to people who are less fortunate. One participant, Mina, explained she coped by thinking of people who suffered through World War II, which makes your own problems seem, well, relatively less severe. It mitigates that feeling of being uniquely singled out by fate. Okay, so that's the coping mechanism, but sub-principle 2 moves from just coping to actual transformation. This is the belief that bad luck will somehow work out for the best in the end. This is the long view. It's a philosophical position, really. It echoes that old parable of the wise farmer who won't label anything as good or bad luck because you just don't know the long-term consequences. And lucky people seem to adopt this attitude instinctively. They do. They're just convinced that something positive will come out of the negative event. They just can't see it yet. The story of Joseph, the former petty criminal, is the ultimate example of this. He said being sent to prison was the luckiest thing that ever happened to him. It's an incredible statement, isn't it? But he could connect the dots. He was arrested for breaking into an office, yeah. While he was being processed, his 2 associates went out on another job and were mistakenly shot at by police. Oh, wow. One was killed, the other seriously wounded. So for him, prison became this protective barrier. It was the forced catalyst he needed to change his life, to get an education, to escape that criminal path. His bad luck literally saved him from much, much worse luck. And the anecdote about the magician's props being stolen in New York?
That's a great career-focused parallel. It is losing your entire act right before a major performance. That sounds like a career-ending disaster. But the desperation forced him to invent brand new tricks, night tricks he never would have thought of otherwise. And the result was a totally new act that was far better than his original. Half of those new tricks later won international prizes, so the theft became the catalyst for his greatest success. The bad luck was the best thing that ever happened to his career. This leads us to the way they prevent the psychological damage from building up. Principle 3, not dwelling on ill fortune. This is so critical for maintaining that expectation of good fortune we talked about earlier. Unlucky people tend to ruminate. They dwell on their misfortune, and that creates that downward spiral we mentioned. A bad mood makes you remember more bad, which worsens your mood, right? Then makes you less likely to spot a future opportunity. It's a vicious cycle. And lucky people just sidestep that whole cycle by choosing not to dwell. They do like Joseph. They learn to just let things go. They focus on the good fortune they've had or what's ahead. It's a kind of cognitive hygiene practice. It keeps their outlook clean and positive. The final set principle is all about active control, taking constructive steps. When bad luck hits, they don't blame fate. They learn and adapt. That's the ultimate differentiator. They approach problems constructively. They learn from mistakes. They apply flexible thinking. They don't rely on superstitions or blaming others. They maintain an internal locus of control. We have to talk about unlucky Shelley here with her multiple car accidents. Shelley blamed jinxes, she blamed the cars, she blamed bad luck, she blamed everything except the one common factor in all three accidents, herself, her own driving. She refused to even consider that she might need to improve their skills because she was so convinced the problem was external. That belief makes self-improvement impossible. And Paul, the retired salesman, his story shows the danger of superstitious thinking. Paul had a big win using the number 3, which he decided was his lucky number. He then kept gambling on that same belief, thinking he'd cracked some cosmic code until he lost everything. Superstitious thinking is unconstructive because it places control outside of yourself. Exactly. When you rely on mystical forces, you stop learning, you stop adapting, you stop taking responsibility. Whereas the lucky approach is to treat every failure as data. They actively look for feedback. They do. We saw in the research that lucky people would actually ask interviewers where they went wrong after a failed job application, not to complain, but to get better for the next one. And they show remarkable lateral thinking. Tell us about the candle, pin, and box problem. That really illustrates the difference. It's a classic test. You're given a candle, a box of drawing pins, and matches, and you have to fix the lit camel to a wall so the wax doesn't drip on the floor. And the unlucky people struggled with this. They did. They tried to, melt the wax to stick the candle to the wall or pin the candle directly. They only saw the box as a container for the pins. Functional fixedness, right? But the lucky people saw the box as a component of this solution. They overcame that fixedness. What's the solution? You empty the box of pins, you use one of the pins to tack the empty box to the wall, creating a small shelf, then you just set the candle on the box and light it. So simple when you see it. They see objects for their potential, not just their intended purpose. That's a great way to put it. They're just more adept at that kind of flexible, creative problem solving. If we pull all 4 principles together, maximize opportunities, listen to intuition, expect good fortune, and turn bad luck into good, it really sounds less like magic and more like, a high-performance psychological profile. That is the definitive conclusion of the research. It is a structured, repeatable system of behaviors which led to the most exciting next step. Could this system be taught? Which brings us to part 3, creating luckier lives and the luck school. Exactly. Now, for anyone listening who's thinking this just sounds like standard self-help, where does Wiseman's work differ? What makes it scientific? The difference is in the structure and the measurement. A lot of positive thinking just focuses on principle 3, expectation, and it ignores the need for action or for resilience. IC Luck School provided targeted, measurable techniques to change specific behaviors across all 4 principles, and crucially, we measured their luck profile scores before and after, so we could show a quantifiable shift.
The program was pretty intensive, wasn't it? It was designed to integrate all 4 principles into people's daily lives over just 1 month. Yes, it had 5 stages. It started with a formal declaration of intent, then participants assessed their own luck profile, and then they were given specific practical homework. What kind of homework are we talking about here? Well, for maximizing opportunities, they might be assigned to consciously talk to 3 new people a day or just to vary their commute to work to increase their exposure to chance. And for intuition, they learned meditation techniques and kept an intuition journal to track their gut feelings and the outcomes. Okay, and what about for managing adversity, principle 4?
That involved an exercise called Find the Treasure in the Trash. Whenever something negative happened, no matter how small, they had to spend 5 minutes writing down how it could have been worse, downward counterfactual thinking. Exactly. And then list 3 potential benefits that could emerge from it. Like the wise farmer, it actively trains the mind to reframe adversity. On the family, that's a powerful daily habit. Let's look at the results, starting with Patricia. She was an unlucky convert. What was her starting point? Patricia started off highly dissatisfied, very low confidence. Her luck score was -4, so profoundly unlucky, and her past with a clear pattern of ignoring her intuition about an abusive partner, despite her gut feelings and friends' advice. So she was really stuck in that victim mentality. How did she change after just 1 month? Her life satisfaction scores improved dramatically. She reported feeling a bit more of a master of what happens instead of just letting life happen to her. She said that when bad luck occurred now, like her car breaking down, it no longer drags me down. She broke that cycle of rumination. He gained that internal locus of control. She did. Now, Carolyn's story is almost hard to believe given the cascade of misfortune she had. She felt genuinely cursed, didn't she? She did. She even coined a phrase for it. I don't have things go wrong in 3s, 5s, 9s, 12s, 16s. Wow. And it was true. She had this compressed time frame of violence, illness, losing a house purchase because her aunt had a stroke, multiple family deaths, just a magnet for misfortune. Her starting luck score was -3. So for someone starting that low, what was the impact? It was astonishing. She reported an 85% improvement in her perception of her luck. Her score soared from -3 to an amazing +6. That's a huge jump, a massive jump, and her satisfaction scores increased across the board. Family, finances, health, career. The main change is that the training taught her to develop a more relaxed attitude and to consciously look for the positive side. She learned to manage the blow instead of being overwhelmed by it. It shows that even really deep, ingrained patterns can be changed quickly. What about people who are already lucky, like Joseph? Did they just get luckier? That was a key test. Can you push the profile even higher? And the answer was yes. Joseph started as lucky with a score of +3. His goal was just to use the techniques more consciously, and that conscious effort had tangible results. It really did. For Principle 1, he made a deliberate effort to expand his network. He struck up a conversation with a student he barely knew, mentioned he needed an expensive textbook, and the student just gave it to him for free. Just gave it to him. A direct, measurable benefit from a conscious action. And then there's the famous story about the 100 pounds. Yes, later on, he consciously decided to treat a piece of paper on the ground as a potential opportunity. Remembering the lesson, he kicked it and found 100 pounds in cash underneath. So while finding money is chance, the act of interacting with your environment is the lucky behavior. That's key. He was also headhunted for a new job after doing some volunteer work, another benefit of his increased engagement with the world. And he even used Principle 4 when facing grief. He did. A fellow student who was a heavy smoker tragically passed away, and Joseph chose to see this terribly sad event as a powerful message
for himself, and he used it as motivation to quit smoking. Exactly. He turned a negative event into a catalyst for a huge positive life change. So the conclusion of the Luck School seems pretty definitive. It is. The transformation was swift and genuine. People can dramatically increase their own good fortune simply by consciously thinking and behaving like a lucky person. It's a trainable skill. That is a powerful validation. But the research didn't just stop with individuals. It started looking at the societal implications. This is where it gets really interesting. You started looking at what compatibility in relationships. Yes, this was a fascinating new direction. You know, the old idea that opposites attract? Largely a myth. Long-term partners are usually matched on core factors.
So we hypothesized that psychological similarity on these 4 luck principles might be a great predictor of success. You tested if lucky people were instinctively attracted to partners who had a similar luck profile. We did. We had them rate hypothetical dating profiles, and the results were conclusive. For the lucky group, they showed a really strong, often unconscious preference for dates who matched their own psychological makeup. So, someone with a high intuition score would be drawn to someone else with a high intuition score. Exactly. And it makes sense, doesn't it? A relationship is all about managing uncertainty together. If both partners have a shared ability to spot opportunities, trust their instincts, stay positive, and reframe adversity, they're just inherently better equipped for long-term stability. They navigate life's bad luck as a team, right? It suggests the luck profile could be a highly effective predictor of romantic compatibility, going way beyond just superficial shared interest. It's about how you operate in the world. Beyond relationships, you explored how luck affects our social networks. You found lucky people maintain a significantly stronger network of luck. This goes right back to Principle 1, and the surname study confirmed this. We asked people if they knew someone on a first-name basis for 15 common surnames, Smith, Jones, Brown, and so on, and the disparity was huge, massive. Almost half of the lucky people knew someone for 8 or more of those names, compared to just 1/4 of the unlucky people. And this isn't about popularity, is it? It's about having a wider network of weak ties, acquaintances, not just close friends. And those weak ties are essential for information, for job opportunities, for chance encounters. Lucky people just cast a wider social net, which was backed up by the small world experiment replication. Yes, the 6 degrees of separation test. Lucky participants were just far more successful at getting a package to a distant target person by passing it through chains of acquaintances. They're more integrated into the social structure. The idea that luck is a function of social integration that's a powerful takeaway. It really is. Their whole psychological profile, being extroverted, believing people will be helpful, it acts as a social integrator. Looking ahead, where is this research pointing now? Well, it's ongoing, and it's exploring some really exciting directions. We're looking at applying luck school principles to larger groups like businesses and communities to see if we can enhance organizational luck, and also looking at how these principles develop in children. Yes, which could fundamentally change how we teach resilience and opportunity spotting from a young age. We're also continuing to look at the persistence of religious and superstitious belief and how that compares to the constructive behaviors of the 4 principles. This could reshape how we build communities, maybe even countries, by focusing on behavior over just blind chance. The potential is certainly there. The transformation in luck school in just 1 month proves that the future isn't fixed. The illusion of luck is created by consistent, constructive action. Now, what does this all mean? The core message is incredibly powerful. Luck is not some mystical force. It's not a lottery ticket. It is rooted in these 4 behavioral principles: maximizing opportunities, listening to intuition, expecting good fortune, and transforming bad luck. And the power lies in recognizing that the future isn't set in stone. By changing how we think, how we behave, we can dramatically increase our own good fortune. The possibilities for applying this are endless. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the science of good fortune. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, follow up in next video.